Ladies and gentlemen, this is internet personality Vangelus with a titanic review of Kamen Rider Kuuga Titan Form from SHFiguarts. The Rider of Purple Pride is surprisingly silver, actually, all things considered. But that's the interesting thing about the Titan Form design, is that the purple is more so of an ornament than a main color scheme. And the silver adds to the heavily armored and solid appearance that Titan Form is supposed to get across. I also like how on the compound eyes, having them as clear purple over these sculpted compound details, a bit of an ethereal look. It's another unique touch that sets Titan Form apart from his fellow Kuugas. You know, if you ignore the gigantic sword that he comes with. Seriously, this thing has Grongi lettering on the handle, as well as the fairly stout blade. But before we get to the sword, let me give you a little tour of this guy's armor, which is also coated in Grongi. Someday I'm going to try coating myself in Grongi and see if it makes me better at the Gegeru. Unless, of course, you just lost the Gegeru. Oh, While a lot of the purple is kind of made cold by the silver that's around it, the purple on his belt is actually a lot more lively of a hue, a bit more of a warm hue of purple. So it's a interesting color combo, and of course, you know, there's purple on his knees, but who cares about Kuuga from the waist down? I think the Titan Form's overall look of having humongous shoulder pads and a very silver color scheme as opposed to the more primary colored schemes of his fellow Kuugas is why a lot of people are drawn to him over the other ones. At least as far as I've read, anyway. And like the other weaponized Kuugas, his hand count is fists, gripping hands, and rage hands. It's also worth noting that the giant shoulder pads don't limit his posability very much at all, but they do kind of look funny. Like, when you put his shoulder all the way up so that they're connected to the chest, they make his shoulders a bit too high, and they point a little bit too far up, and if you put them down to a more comfortable angle, you start seeing the black joint there. So I suppose that's a minor aesthetic quibble to have with Titan Form. That aside, though, you know, all of his other posability is all fine, and really, what do you care about? You want to see the sword, right? Alright, this sword is a badass. And I like that they even kept the slat in the top of it. I believe that the Sochok Henshin version of this actually filled that gap in, and I kind of like it there, because this blade is supposed to extend out of the top, if I recall correctly, and I might be recalling incorrectly. But I kind of like the idea of having this enormous broadsword with like a hole for air clearance in the front. It turns out really well. Unfortunately, you only get one sword, but I believe that only the rising form of Titan used two of these things at once. And the sword is the draw of this guy outside of the armor. It's a big accessory, and it's very oomphy, and that's why I think a lot of people, when they decide to buy a second Kuuga, Titan Form is the one that I hear a lot of people go to first, because even though all the weaponized Kuugas have unique shoulder and arm parts, unique chest plates, and a unique weapon, for some reason Titan just feels like an even bigger change. It also helps that, you know, the handle of that enormous sword is big enough so you can kind of dual fist grip it a little bit and have him do some Highlander stuff. Highlander, by the way, if anyone ever watched that, and you know Richie, how does Richie pull a rapier out of some of those tiny 90s jeans jackets that he wears? I really don't get it. Anyway, Kuuga Titan Form, when he's dual wielding, it works. When he's swinging the thing around with one hand, it works. Kuuga Titan Form is a really cool figure art, and I would recommend him. I suppose I would fall in line with the party line that, since he has a big-ass sword and more armor, he looks more visually unique. But I really wouldn't put down the other Kuugas in any way. I think that all the weaponized Kuugas offer something unique to the table, and it's all a matter of both your aesthetic choice, your preferred choice of weaponry, and even just like what color is your favorite color. So when you go for Kuuga, you know, everyone buys the Mighty Form first. I don't think many people would buy one of the weaponized Kuugas first, and a lot of people decide like, oh, you know, I'm not gonna fall into buying multiple Kuugas. Unless you don't really like Kuuga that much, I think that it's inevitable. So, if you do give in, I hope that these looks at the weaponized Kuugas have offered a bit of insight, or at least high-definition imagery, to help you make your decision. This has been Internet Personality Vangelus. And the basic foursome of Kuuga forms is complete. But there's more, ladies and gentlemen, because that rabbit hole I've been talking about, I've fallen down it. I've fallen down hard. And I pulled myself back up. And when I reached the surface, ladies and gentlemen, as I was rising up to look at the sun, I felt amazing.